Hello, everyone. I am Sydney McKinney. I am the Executive Director of the National Black Women's Justice Institute. I am so happy that each and every one of you has joined us tonight for NBWJI's final book club for 2022, but not our last, just the last one for this year. We launched this book club to elevate books by Black women that highlight the real impact of incarceration on Black women and girls. And I'm so excited that tonight we are speaking with Miss Susan Burton, founder of A New Way of Life, which is a reentry program in Los Angeles, California, which promotes healing, power, and opportunity for formerly incarcerated people. Ms. Burton has a long list of celebrated achievements under her belt. I'm only going to name a few of them. So in addition to founding A New Way of Life in 1998, she co-founded All of Us or None, and the formerly incarcerated and convicted people and families movement. In 2010, she was named a CNN Top 10 hero. And in 2015, the Los Angeles Times named her one of 18 new civil rights leaders in the country. And those are just a few of her highlights. I also just want to let folks know very quickly, and this is spur of the moment, that she is up for L'Oreal Paris Women of Worth. I'm going to drop the link into the chat. So folks, please vote for Susan. And you can also vote for her several times over several days. So it's not just one vote. As I have alluded, she is a powerhouse and we're very excited to have her with us. So I first had the privilege of meeting Ms. Burton soon after I started in my role at NBWJI. She is someone I deeply admire and who greatly inspires our work. Because of Ms. Burton and A New Way of Life and the work that they're leading, last year, the National Black Women's Justice Institute launched Pathways to Wellness, which is a qualitative interview study that's exploring how formerly incarcerated women access care and support their wellness after release. So that project is inspired by work that she and her team are leading. And the innovation that they're doing, particularly around health and wellness. She is a key advisor on that project as well. I just have to say, I am incredibly grateful for her relentless commitment to center and support the needs of Black women who are returning home from incarceration. As detailed in her memoir, Becoming Ms. Burton, From Prison to Recovery, to Leading the Fight for Incarcerated Women, formerly incarcerated Black women confront a seemingly ever-growing mountain of obstacles to reclaim their wellness, stability, dignity, and power after incarceration. Challenges spring up at every turn, from overcoming addiction and trauma to being denied access to education and a living wage employment. In a field that constantly overlooks the experiences and disregards the needs of Black women who are returning home from incarceration, Ms. Burton refuses to let us avert our eyes and look away. She demands that we see directly impacted Black women in their totality, that we commit to their healing, and that we do everything we can to help them achieve the lives they have always envisioned for themselves, but may have never thought possible. So I just want to say thank you, Ms. Burton, for your bravery in sharing your story, and thank you so much for your leadership in the field. With that, I'm going to turn things over to Dr. Janaé Bonsu. Dr. Bonsu is NBWJI's Director of Research and Advocacy. She will be leading tonight's conversation. Dr. Bonsu-Love, I'm sorry, did I leave the love out? I'm sorry. Dr. Bonsu-Love is an activist, scholar, policy advocate, and licensed master social worker committed to ending criminalization while supporting the healing of Black women and girls and non-binary people. And she is leading our Pathways to Wellness study. I am sorry, Dr. Bonsu-Love, that if I left out the love, because I know you've changed your name. Anyways, take it away.
It's all good. Thank you so much, Sydney, for that introduction. And I just want to echo all that Sydney has said about you, Ms. Burton, and the work that you're doing. I'm so excited to be in conversation with you tonight. So Becoming Ms. Burton is just such a masterful work of deeply personal truth and storytelling with important research and policy context as well. I think it was equal parts heartbreaking and heartwarming, informative and endearing. And so, I know from the read that the journey to becoming Miss Burton and accomplishing all that you have was a winding one. So I'd like to start really generally and ask, what inspired you to write Becoming Miss Burton, and why was it important for you to do so?
Janaé, first I want to thank Sydney for the beautiful and wonderful introduction, and thank you for committing yourself also to this work. We need so many to be committed and devoted to this work. So thank you for using your skill, knowledge, energy, wit to help Black women overcome all the obstacles in this nation. One of them being mass incarceration. Mm-hmm. You know, I wrote the book to tell the story of women who are being incarcerated, especially Black women. I wrote the book because when we talk about mass incarceration, we never talk about women, or we didn't talk about women. The narrative was always around men, and the people who were telling those narratives, they had no experience with the system other than research, other than kind of like what I want to say, sort of like talking heads, and they were usually white people. They were usually, I guess what you might call social scientists or criminologists, or, but they didn't look like me. They didn't come from where I come from. They were denied opportunities like we are denied. And I needed to put women's voices and women's reality into the conversation. So I did it through writing the book, Becoming Miss Burton. And I do think it spurred quite a bit of like reality check, like what are we doing?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Indeed. And, you said you wanted to intentionally focus on the plight of women in the criminal legal system, starting with yourself. Leads me to thinking about gender responsive programming, right? There's a lot of talk about gender responsive programming. And, while the number of women entering prisons and jails has grown significantly, a disproportionate number of whom are Black, a corresponding increase in programming has not materialized with it. And so, I know you talk about your personal journey and also the work that your journey has inspired. And so I'm wondering if you can talk a bit about how did your own entry journey set you up to start a New Way of Life Reentry project? And what would you say, like what elements of a New Way of Life would you say make it gender responsive? Like what does that mean and look like?
So I cycled in and out of prison and was under the control of the California Department of Corrections for almost 20 years. My son was killed, accidentally killed by a LAPD detective. After his death, I just couldn't hold any more harm, any more hurt, any more pain. And it toppled me into trying to medicate my grief with alcohol. It escalated to drug use. I was in prison and no one would help me. After many, many years of cycling in and out of the system, I found this place that helped me. And the place was in Santa Monica. It was a drug treatment facility in Santa Monica. And there I saw a different world of how Addiction was addressed. People weren't criminalized. They were given a court paper to go to AA meetings, or they was directed to drug treatment. They were sent for therapy, but they weren't chained and handcuffed and worked like a slave, you know. And it was like an aha moment. And I was like, you know, why was I treated so harshly? Why didn't someone see enough value in me to even just give me a piece of paper and direct me to Alcoholics Anonymous, Cocaine Anonymous, or Narcotics Anonymous? Why was I chained, cuffed, and punished for medicating the grief for a mother who had lost a child and didn't know how to deal with it? And it's just ironic that law enforcement was, a law enforcement officer was the driver of the car, and then law enforcement punishes me and chains me and cages me and make me go to work. And if I don't go to work, I stay a day longer in prison. And while out here at the beach community, those people get treatment. And it was just like an aha moment. It was like the two different worlds, 8 miles apart. So it was just chilling and also eye-opening what this nation will do to poor women and then poor Black women. You know, I was hurt and harmed, you know, and my pain was caged over and over again. So, yeah.
Yeah, and there's so much there in what you just shared. The way that the legal system has repeatedly and systemically chosen punishment over treatment, punishment over protection, is, you know, I think, or has been definitely echoed through what we've been learning from participants in the Pathways to Wellness study. Sydney mentioned at the top of the call, you know, well, I'll just say really briefly, Susan mentioned your advisor role. I just want to share with other folks that, you know, at NBWJI, we are intentional about following the lead and expertise of folks who are directly impacted and centering directly impacted both voices and experiences whenever possible. So we're really fortunate to have you as an advisor to help inform our research questions and data collection materials and support our recruitment efforts. And, you know, one of the things that we have heard a lot is this kind of a lack of information about resources to actually help the core issue of what's wrong. You know, so if someone is dealing with trauma from whether it's loss, whether it's, you know, whatever the case is, you know, if there's no treatment available, then, you know, they're self-medicating, and, you know, just kind of trickles this cycle in and out of incarceration. And so one question I'm thinking about is, you know, what is your assessment of how we feel that information gap of, you know, how do people get to know what resources are available? And, you know, I guess secondarily, thinking about what does, I'm sorry, I lost my place. What does reentry services at New Way of Life look like for women who are returning home and do actually get access to these resources that you offer?
So, you know, A New Way of Life is, you know, a place for women to come and be that originally I modeled it on the place where I went in Santa Monica. The difference is we don't do sort of like drug treatment services, but what we do is we provide an environment that allows women a place to heal and belong, and a place to, ignite their passion, ignite their dreams, to heal from all of the experiences of harm that they've actually encountered, not only while incarcerated, but while maybe before incarceration. So what we do there is that we have, well, first of all, we have 12 homes across LA County, and women are invited to come into the home. We have morning meditation at 8 o'clock in the morning that we can start our day on a positive note. We have a family reunification department that is staffed with attorneys. We have a post-conviction relief department that is staffed with attorneys. We have workforce development to support people to go back to school, to get a job, or to, start a business, whatever they'd like to do. But I think that one of the most unique things about a new way of life is that we support people to heal. We support women and the LGBT community to heal and to dream again. We're going beyond just survival. You're here, you're safe. You don't have to worry about lights, gas, and all of the living things. You don't have to worry about food. You don't have to worry about clothing. At some point you're gonna, get your style back, get your favorite color back. You're gonna dream again about what you'd like to do. You're gonna open a savings account. You're gonna become productive. You're gonna become clear about who you are. You're gonna understand how important you are to the world, to the community, to your family. So you're gonna be treated with dignity. We're gonna respect you. You're gonna respect us back. But it's a safe place to begin to maybe live again. And for some of the women, the living is for the first time, based on what they've been through. So, that kind of encapsulates what we want to do at a new way of life. And Janaé, our success rates are in the 90s. I think it's because we're flexible, we're responsive to the individuality. We understand that people make mistakes, even after incarceration. But that doesn't mean you're a throwaway person. That means that, okay, you made a mistake. You know what it feels like inside of you to make a mistake, so I don't have to beat you up because you made a mistake. I can just say, okay, so how can I help you now? It's a safe place for women to begin their new life journey.
It's so funny that you mentioned dreaming, like the ability to dream again. It's something that we ask participants in the study explicitly, to dream big. And if they were, given an opportunity to design the ideal place for Black women transitioning out of confinement to get their wellness needs met, what would it look like? And we heard a new way of life explicitly in these visions. And something that's being called to mind to me is someone said, one of the things I love about a new way of life is that they know it's easy changing your lifestyle. And sometimes you might not follow a rule, but one thing about a new way of life is they give you room to make mistakes. Everybody's not coming in perfect, but they're not asking for perfection. They're just asking for growth. And that really stuck with me, and speaks to what you're saying, just, focusing on regaining your value, understanding who you are, knowing your worth, and, really just restoring dignity, like you said. So it's just really amazing to hear about such a high success rate, and it's really clear why in hearing what you're saying in your approach. And so, I mean, A New Way of Life is one of, you know, a broad array of work that you do and what you discuss throughout your book. I want to talk a bit about your advocacy work as well. And actually, being that we're on the heels of Election Day, there are millions of people across the country have, you know, exercised the right to, you know, participate in democracy in the way of voting. But at the same time, you know, the millions of people were not given that opportunity, you know, denied the right to vote due to a felony conviction.
Yeah.
According to the Sentencing Project, there's an estimated 4.6 million Americans were barred from voting due to a felony conviction. So, you know, I think there's a lot of contention around voting and its utility or usefulness and who has access to practice it. Yeah. You know, I think one sliver of light, though, is, you know, what seems to be in efforts to bring voting registration and get out to vote efforts into jails. But, you know, something I'd love to hear you talk about is the role of ballot measures in voting in the lives of incarcerated and formerly incarcerated people.
You know,
go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, voting is so important, and it's, you know, like fundamental to good citizenship. So we here in California, a couple of years ago, we had a ballot measure that restored the right for people to vote who were on parole. For years, I went into the jail, the local jail, every year and registered people to vote. And now our county recorder is actually taking that on. I don't know how good of a job they're doing, but you know, they have the sheriffs and the county controller, the person responsible, the department responsible for registering people to vote. You know, they have much more power than me. They kind of blocked me out. But they said they started a program. But for years, I went in and I registered people to vote. We've been registering formerly incarcerated people and educating them that they can vote now on parole. We changed that law. We got that ballot measure out. We informed people about the measure and it passed. You know, across the nation, there was 5 states that took slavery out of their constitution. No, there was 5 states who had a ballot measure to take slavery out of their constitution. Only 3 of those states passed. States like Louisiana, they want to keep slavery in their constitution. We advocated this year to have ACA 6 on our ballot to take slavery out of our constitution. Our legislature didn't pass it. So, you know, and we're California, right? So, you know, it's really important to have, you know, advocacy. It's really important for us to use our gifts and our skills and spread it. You know, someone asked in the chat, what was the name of the book? So the name of my book is Becoming Miss Burton. That was before becoming Michelle Obama. But I just want to say I was flattered that she would have a Becoming book too and to feel like I'm in pretty good company. But this right here is the book. This was the first edition of the book. And, you know, this book, as you see, it has this little star on it right there, right here, where this was a prison edition book. And when I wrote this book, and it really took off, but I felt like the women inside of jails and prisons was one of the most important people to read the book, for them to understand that, you know, you have to fight for your right to be the best that you can be. And it's a hard struggle, but it's doable. And so I printed like 12,000 copies of this book. First, I printed 6, and then I went on a nationwide tour of prisons and jails. And I printed another 6,000 of the books and just kept going into prisons all over the nation, all over the world, actually in parts of Africa also, to do book signings with the women and talk with them and let them know that, we are out here fighting for them and we're trying to usher them back home. And Janaé, what came out of it is that women talked about not having anywhere to go after being incarcerated, going back to communities where they were pushed out, and only people that would welcome them back into the community are the places that they had left, and that wasn't the place they needed to be. So, Janaé, when I started, I was haunted by the tears in the eyes of the women begging me to bring a new way of life to their respective communities. So what I did is I started a project called SAFE. Excuse me. SAFE stands for Sisterhood Alliance for Freedom and Equality. And what SAFE seeks to do is to replicate our model. So I have a wealth of knowledge, a wealth of information, and I've been training people since 2019 to replicate our model. So right now we have 16 states that we're in, 24 different sites of people that I've trained. I've trained them for free. I'm not trying to, exploit the field. I'm trying to, enhance the opportunities for women, especially Black women. I'm trying to build leadership of formerly incarcerated women who are eager to work in their communities and just need a hand up to start a project there. So Melissa says my trainings are amazing. So I've I'm just so grateful to be able to add some justice, some safety, some opportunity. Janaé, you think about what we spend. Some states spend 50, 60. Here in California, we spend $76,000 a year to incarcerate a person, to incarcerate a woman who probably needs mental health services, addiction services, education services, rehabilitation services, and we're caging them and exploiting their labor instead of helping them. So, I want to turn that around. So we spend this type of money and then boot them back into a community and tell them to pull themselves up by their boots when they're barefoot. They don't have any boots. So, that's part of my advocacy and efforts also is to build the leadership of women, Black and brown women in our communities. And I do recognize that, the Black experiences are different from the brown experiences, but we need to help women. We need to help women to come back into our communities, but we especially need to give opportunity to Black women.
Yes, I love this idea and the work of the Safe Housing Network. I was actually struck by the statistic or just the comparison that the annual cost to incarcerate a woman is about, like you said, $76,000, but the annual cost per woman at a new way of life, at least at the time of your book, was $16,000. Yeah. A stark difference. And you would think that it'd be common sense practice for state and federal governments to invest in replicating a new way of life model. But here you are filling the gap yourself by starting the Safe Housing Network and doing these trainings, across the country. And it just really makes me wonder why governments are not invested in not just the savings, because, we know the governments are pretty obsessed with, fiscal responsibility, but also just the practical and moral, I think, imperative to actually meet people's needs. So
governments say that they're fiscally responsible, but why would you not invest in something that is going to make our communities better and safer? But then there was all the rhetoric that, safety was incarceration, safety was police, safety was other things, but we know what real safety looks like. I know how to create safety in our communities. So for folks, Janaé, that would like to come to the training and get involved in replicating, they can go to A New Way of Life, our website, anewwayoflife.org. There's a tab on the website that says safe. And in that tab, it says apply for training. And I've already done one this year, but I'll be doing another safe training next year to just spread the knowledge. So people can register for that if they're interested in learning our model.
Yes, literally one of the audience questions that came in the registration was, how can I start a women's housing program? So thank you for answering that. I hope the person who posed that is on this call to receive that information.
So E.B. Jordan in Detroit says it's the best thing you could ever do. I hope you're on the call tomorrow, E.B.
So this kind of brings me to talking about how governments are not investing in the type of programming that actually meets folks where they are and provides the needs. One of the things that we're trying to do, so the Pathways to Wellness study, we are wanting to inform like a larger initiative to advocate for more gender responsive, culturally affirming, trauma-informed reentry services and programming across the country, starting with California. And we've been having conversations with California-based organizations, and our common thread is the sentiment that Black women aren't a focus in conversations, aren't a focus in services, aren't a focus in programs, despite the disproportionate representation in the legal system. What do you see as the barriers to intentionally centering Black women in the reentry space, both in California and nationally? Why is that so hard to do given our disproportionate numbers in the system?
When I began to examine why these abundant services was available in Santa Monica, and it was a desert in South LA for services. And I said, I'm going to bring these services. Now that I've experienced this, I can, feel, taste, and have seen it. I've experienced it, and I'm going to bring it back to South LA. Mm-hmm. So, racism is real, and, Black women are powerful. Do people not want to see our power realized? So there's a disinvestment and ignoring, but I think that's actually supported by fear of the power that we possess, fear of the love that we possess. It's so I could go on and on into why they don't, but I'm just going to say that I will. I will invest everything. I will invest all my time, all my energy, all my resources to ensuring that Black women have a chance and an opportunity to see their lives thrive, to heal from the harm, and be able to stand up in the midst of someone trying to harm them, block that harm not only from them, but from the next sister too.
Yes, I love that. And beginning of what you said, it kind of reminded me of when I lost my train of thought earlier. What I was going to say was that, I mean, you mentioned Santa Monica as the place where you were able to, for the first time, get the treatment and services that you need. And, you know, one of the themes that I'm learning is the important role of geography in access to services, particularly in California. You know, San Francisco being cited as like a place that has, you know, significantly more resources than Riverside County, or, you know, some deserts in LA, as you mentioned. And so this model of really showing people their power and giving folks blueprints to kind of replicate the type of work that, you know, the freedom work that you do, as you call it, I think is really key to building a movement and getting closer to the world that we want to live in. And so that reminds me about your policy advocacy journey that you talk about in the book. You mentioned going back and forth to Sacramento, time and time again, you know, watching so much effort fall on deaf ears, and, you know, wanting to quit, but you figured that the best place for you was to be in your community, helping to build a powerful voice of the community. So I just want to know if you would add anything about what effective policy advocacy looks like to you. If it's not kind of going back and forth to the state capitol, giving testimony, and, you know, not really having legislators hear you, then what is it? What is effective policy advocacy in your eyes?
Yeah, you know, so I do think that we need to continue to be in their faces, and propose legislation and keep knocking on that door, but we can't abandon. I can't abandon the work that I know is bearing fruit when a Black woman gets the opportunity, when she can hold her baby in her arms again, when she can show up on a job, or show up, you know, show up for herself, show up for her community. So I believe we need to continue to knock on that door and hold our legislators, you know, our governor, you know, our board of supervisors. We need to continue to hold them accountable and continue to let them know that we're here, that we're watching, that we're demanding change. And Janaé, we are here in numbers. You know, we are, through the formerly incarcerated and convicted people's movement, we are working to wake a sleeping giant, which is all the formerly incarcerated people, their families, to begin to be active, to begin to have some accountability, to show up in numbers. You know, when I was going back and forth to Sacramento, it was heart-wrenching, to the place that I physically got knots all through my body. For years, I was trying to get our legislature to opt out of the welfare ban and allow people with drug convictions to have food stamps. And they would not do it. And I just couldn't get it. And it was so hurtful and so harmful till I just could not continue to allow them to harm me by trying to beg them to give people food stamps who had drug convictions. The only people who were banned from food stamps were people with drug convictions. And it was just downright hurtful and harmful to watch elected officials say that people with drug convictions could not get food stamps. and then look at the women in the homes, you know, making sure that they had food, but watching them feel, how would you say, feel tossed out because they couldn't put in and buy food stamps. Yeah, so, but what I want to say is Supervisor Holly Mitchell was smart enough to actually get our food stamps back to our community through a budget item. So she snuck it in.
Oh, under the radar. Okay.
Under the radar. And now people can have food stamps. But you could have raped somebody, you could have molested a child, you could have did anything except have a drug charge.
And it's so wild that it took so long, and that, you know, it had to be done in a kind of, you know, inconspicuous way for it to actually happen. And there are still states, as Anita's in the chat,
in North Carolina,
one of them, where the drug ban still exists.
Yeah, so I hope that they're working with Forward Justice there, an advocacy group in North Carolina. My friend, a part of the formerly incarcerated and convicted people's movement, Daryl Atkinson, is there. And that's something you all can work on together. You know why? I just, anyway, yeah, it's just like mind-boggling that a person would be, or that a group of intelligent people, supposedly intelligent people, would be so mean-spirited to deny people food.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that just tells me that the so-called war on drugs is still not over. And this drug ban is, one of the ways that it has manifested and continues.
Yes.
And it brings me to ask, what would you say? So clearly, there's the fight against mass incarceration, and I would say incarceration period is more of many fronts. So what would you say are other kinds of policy or legislation that we should be pushing forward? We being NBWJI, we being other organizations and folks out there who want to be mobilized. Like what are the kinds of policies we should be pushing forward to end mass incarceration, and specifically for women? Well, Black women.
The Adoption and Safe Families Act should be dismantled. It fast tracks children. It fast tracks children into adoption, and the disruption of parental rights, or not the disruption, but the end of to take for somebody's parental rights while they're incarcerated. And what the Adoption and Safe Family Act also does is it incentivizes states to adopt children out. So say you get $6,000 for each child in your state that's adopted. In order to continue to qualify for that $6,000, you have to adopt more children out in 2022 than you did in 2021. So the numbers have been growing and growing and growing ever since the Adoption and Safe Families Act was passed. So, at this point, they are thirsty to adopt your child. And I hope people understand my word thirsty. We're in the community, when we talk about people being thirsty,
right.
They mean, they are just really, really,
overeager.
Scandalous. They just scandalous about the removal of children and the fast track adoption. So, thus we have a family reunification department that helps women to get their children back and holds the courts accountable, and every opportunity to get them together, to get their parental rights reinstated and get that family back together. because family is a stabilizer of safety, of love, of commitment in our community. And when that's disrupted, what do people have? So that's the Adoption Safe Families Act needs to be dismantled. And we were working with Karen Bass here in when she was in Congress to amend it, but it really needs to be dismantled. So and I don't know how the races came out yet. She's running for mayor here in Los Angeles. And it's tight. She's running against this big millionaire guy who had all the money in the world to put in it. And, she's a Black woman, right?
Right.
She don't have all the money in the world, but she got all the love of the community.
Yeah, I mean, and that's what's important, right? The power of the people. So, fingers crossed for her in that race. But I appreciate you mentioning the Adoption of Families, Safe Families Act, because family unification is, I've learned a key, critical component of what talk about, gender responsive reentry. Family reunification, I think, is a pillar. Because one of the fact that most women who are incarcerated are parents of a minor child, and and ask women about their priorities, their reentry priorities in the Pathways to Wellness study, and kind of where their health and wellness falls in that. A lot of women are just like, I can't even think about my health until I get my kids back, right? It can be really debilitating to try to reunite with your child, and having so many barriers placed in front of you to do that. And so yes, definitely appreciate that dimension to be dismantled. Are there any other policy initiatives or other struggles you are currently engaged in not even just through a new way of life, but All of Us or None, or any of the other kind of
and we
wanted that you're part of.
Through All of Us or None, we wanted to take the slavery, that exception to slavery when convicted of a crime, out of our Constitution. And again, we couldn't pass it through our legislature. And it goes to say, who are you people, right? You want to hang on to slavery as a part of what we do here in this state. So, I mean, Janaé, what I can say is the work that I've been engaged in for the last 24 years looks much different than it did 20 years ago. We're making progress, but there's so much progress to be made on many, many, many fronts. So, when we see, when those in the webinar see, an injustice, it's time for them to take action against that injustice. I do what I can do, daily, but it's not my responsibility to do it all.
Mm-hmm.
We all need to be working. We all need to be supporting, justice and ending injustice, ending racism, ending, capitalism, working to share across your area. And, I want to encourage people to have the courage to speak up or act up when they have the opportunity. And they'll probably go to bed at night with a more peaceful heart and a full heart.
That you must have known that I was going to ask you about, the fact everyone has a role to play in ending the systemic punishment of Black women and girls. So, what is it that the rest of us should be doing? I know we all are not Susan, done all the great things that you have done, but everyone can do something. So, I was going to ask you if you have a call to action for us. Everyone on this call, where might NBWJI specifically be focusing our efforts? Like what a call to action.
So for right now, I have something really, 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 really easy. They can pull that link out of the chat. They can vote. You can vote every day, once a day, for me to become the woman of worth and to raise the platform of this issue. It's, one thing, okay, woman of worth, but what I'm looking at, how do I raise the platform of this issue where more people are aware of not only the problem, but the solution? If we can get people home, if we can stop the pipeline of incarceration by placing them in a place where they're safe and they have the opportunity to have an opportunity, then that's what we can do. So it's really, really easy. Go there. It takes 30 seconds a day to vote. But after you vote, when there's an opportunity for you to help in your local community, you can help a new way of life. You can help you can be a part of the change that you want to see by being by doing something. So you can start with the vote for Susan Burton for L'Oreal Woman of the Year, 30 seconds. But there are things that you can do, every day. And I don't need to tell people what those are. They know when they come across it. They know when they see it.
Indeed. So I, just want to thank you so much for your sharing your time, your experiences, your vast knowledge. I continue to learn from you every time I interact with you, directly or indirectly. I have gotten several questions in from the audience that you have actually covered throughout this conversation.
Are they covered? I want to make sure people do have their questions responded to.
And not seeing any additional questions in the Q&A.
Okay.
So I don't actually want to hold you for an extra 5 minutes.
Okay.
I'm happy to give folks 5 minutes back of their time, but this was so incredibly just informative. And I hope that if you are listening right now, if you have not yet picked up and read Becoming Miss Burton, From Prison to Recovery, Leading the Fight for Incarcerated Women, please go get that. There is a link in the chat. I hope that if you needed some inspiration, then you got it tonight, because Ms. Burton is very inspiring. And please keep those calls to action in mind. And we will see everyone next time for our book club starting back next year. So keep your emails, we'll keep your eyes peeled in your emails for that. Thank you so much again, Ms. Burton, for joining us.
You are welcome. And Janaé, I just want to again let people know our website is anewwayoflife.org. If you have any questions or further thoughts for later, you can actually go to info@anewwayoflife. Or you can send in a questionnaire through the website. So I want to thank everybody for tuning in to this talk, and we're going to keep on doing the work. Thank you, Janaé, so much.
Thank you. Have a great night, everyone.